Good afternoon. My name is Spence Taylor. I'm Senior Associate Dean for Academic Affairs and Diversity, and I want to welcome everyone to the class of 2017 White Coat Ceremony. Before we get started, just some basic housekeeping. If everyone would please keep flash photography to a minimum, right? Except for Randy. And silence your cell phones if that would be all right. First order of business is to introduce Dr. John Hartman for an invocation. Oh, sure.
Please be seated. Thank you, Dr. Taylor. I was hoping maybe I'd get to pray twice. I invite you to bow your heads with me for a word of prayer. Let us pray. Gracious and loving God, we gather here this afternoon to celebrate and encourage young persons as they pass a milestone today, receiving their white coats. This is a time, a special time, that celebrates our medical students' past achievement and paves the way for future success in the practice of medicine. They have demonstrated stellar academic performance and a passion for knowledge. As their family and friends and faculty, we stand in awe of them. Nonetheless, they do not arrive here today on their own. They've been blessed by loved ones who have championed them, teachers who have guided them, and colleagues who have stood alongside them. They will need these persons and others to remind them that they are loved and that it is okay to be vulnerable and not perfect in the future. Bless these students with enough continued success to make them strong, enough disappointment to keep them humble. Remind them that care for themselves also must be a choice for wholeness and health. Amen.
Thank you, Reverend Hartman. It's now my privilege to introduce the members of the podium behind me, an illustrious crew, starting with Reverend Hartman. Sitting next to Reverend Hartman is Dr. Jim Buggy, who's our Associate Dean for Student Affairs. Dr. Buggy, you stand. Next to him is Mr. Mike Reardon, who's President and CEO of the Greenville Health System. Mike. Next to him is our featured speaker, and Dr. Yuki will have the pleasure of an in-depth interview, but George Thibault from the Macy Foundation. I believe you recognize Dr. Jerry Yuki, the founding dean of the USC School of Medicine, Greenville. Behind Dr. Yuki is Dr. Paul Catalano, who's assistant dean of student affairs and admissions for the Greenville Hospital, or for USC School of Medicine, Greenville. Dr. Lynn Crespo is next to him. Dr. Lynn Crespo is our associate dean for education at USC School of Medicine, Greenville. Dr. Bob Bess, who's associate dean for faculty affairs. And then Dr. Brenda Timms, who's vice president for academic and faculty affairs at the Greenville Health System. So a small hand of applause. My duty next is to introduce Hunter Matthews for the class president of your class that you've elected. But before this, just a couple of comments from my perspective just to kick this thing off. The white coat ceremony is a relatively new thing for myself, and I think for Dr. Yuki as well. Back when we were in medical school, we didn't have a white coat ceremony. As a matter of fact, back when Dr. Yuki and I were in medical school, they didn't have a lot of the antibiotics that they have right now in terms of taking care. So the fact that there's something new shouldn't really surprise anybody. I think that the ceremony itself, this is our second one, is an amazing ceremony. I think it gives us a real opportunity to take a backward glance and a forward perspective. And the backward glance is one that you should all be very proud to be where you are. It's no easy feat to get into medical school. I think you know that, but I'm not sure you really understand the magnitude of the challenge that is in front of you as you go to try to aspire to this. So congratulations, and you ought to really feel very, very good. This is an elite group, the elite of the elite, and I want to congratulate you, and this is really a special day, and this is to signify that accomplishment. I also want to challenge you going forward. This is a real transition. This is a transition from a situation where the educational system was there for you and you were a customer. And you're looking at me right now and you're thinking, I thought I was a customer for this as well, because last time you look, you had a tuition to pay, and we get that. But in reality, this is a transition around responsibility. And if you look back at the guiding principles of this medical school, that 7th guiding principle talks about responsibility and the responsibility of owning and co-owning the medical system when you finish. And the challenge we're having for right now is you're going to co-own your educational process. This is a new medical school. It's a new school of thought. You are co-creators of this medical school, very similar to what we talked about in terms of whether you're going to approach the world in a to-me mentality versus healthy responsibility going forward. This is about healthy responsibility and co-owning this medical school. If there's a situation and a problem, it's not our problem, it's not your problem, it's our problem. And we're going to look to you to help us solve it. The charter class, your predecessor, the M2 group, there's some big shoes to fill because they took healthy responsibility and helped us figure this thing out together. And we look for this group right now. This is great legacy stuff. You hear about hidden curriculum, and you hear about the hidden curriculum that you're getting. The hidden curriculum of a brand new medical school is exactly that you're co-creating, and you'll have the responsibility, and you will always be able to look back 50 years from now and say that you helped co-create a new medical school. A pretty cool, pretty heady responsibility. So that's one thing. The second and last thing, as you go forward, when you start talking to your peers in other medical schools and you start getting nervous because they're not doing the same thing you're doing, it's because you're not doing the same thing you're doing. We're trying to create a different kind of doctor, a doctor that takes responsibility, understands that the world's changing, that you're going to help us change the world. And so you're going to talk to people, and they're going to be doing things a little bit differently. Their curricula will be different. The way that what they learn is a little bit different, and that's okay. We're going to try to make the best doctor that we can make for the current times to weather the changes going forward. So I congratulate you and wish you well. The door is always open in my office, always open, Dr. Yuki's office, and this is going to be an exciting time for all of us to co-create this new medical school. So without further ado, if I can, your president, Mr. Hunter Matthews.
Thank you, Dr. Taylor. I was a little worried I'd be the only one in a bow tie, but I knew I could count on Dr. Taylor to be there for me. I'd like to thank you all for coming today. I know some of you, it's just a short drive across Greenville, and others, a flight across the country. But on behalf of my class, I'd like to say thank you. I know that we wouldn't be here today if it weren't for each and every one of you out there. As I look around, it's hard to believe that today has finally arrived. It seems like yesterday I was sitting in my first pre-med class thinking to myself, how in the world am I going to get through this semester? And here we are, having completed our first 6 weeks of medical school. Although our medical education careers are just beginning, so far, we've had many significant moments that I know we will never forget. The feeling of pure joy and ecstasy that overcame us as we left the testing center, having just finished our MCAT. The excitement of our first day as medical students, meeting our peers that would soon become best friends. The curiosity and wonder as we received our first stethoscopes in the mail. I'll never forget spending the afternoon walking around my apartment for hours, listening to my own heartbeat, thinking to myself, I sure hope this is what it's supposed to sound like. The realization, as we met our first patients in the donor lab, that we would no longer be studying medicine solely in a textbook, but that we had started down a lifelong road of hands-on learning, where we would learn the scientific knowledge and the clinical skills to becoming outstanding physicians. And lastly, today, the white coat ceremony. For today, by putting on these white coats, we're forever setting ourselves apart. For more than 100 years, the white coat has been one of the most recognizable physical traits of a physician, symbolizing wisdom, purity, intelligence, and years of hard work. And today I would like to add one word to that list: hope. When we graduate from this institution in 4 short years, we will not only be providing hope to our patients through treating their symptoms and diseases, but also help them to lead longer, healthier, and more balanced lives, transforming how healthcare is viewed and practiced. I'm truly honored to be speaking to you today. I'm even more humbled that I have the opportunity to represent a group of 54 people that will be receiving their white coats today, whom I have the pleasure of calling classmates. Within the class of 2017, there are students of all kinds, all walks of life, some of whom are fresh from their undergraduate education, others who have taken time to work, earn other degrees, travel, or just simply experience life. Although there are many things that make us individuals, there are even more things that solidly bind us together. Our choice to dedicate our lives not to the pursuit of financial gains or status, but to helping those around us, having a positive impact on the communities in which we live. Our never-ending thirst for knowledge, which undoubtedly has led us to this stage today. And last, but certainly not least, our life-changing decision in choosing the University of South Carolina School of Medicine, Greenville. At this institution, we have the opportunity to work alongside some of the brightest minds in the medical field. In addition to our core curriculum, we also have the chance to learn from practicing physicians, allowing us to correlate our academic knowledge with clinical application. Each of our professors shows a genuine passion for teaching. It is clear that they not only want to produce knowledgeable doctors, but that they seek to develop us into well-rounded physicians who will make a lasting impact on the lives of our patients. In addition to having one of the most brilliant, well-respected, and passionate faculties of any medical school in the country, we have our first test next Friday, so I hope they keep that in mind when they're grading my test. But in addition to having one of the most brilliant, well-respected, and passionate faculties of any medical school in our country, the technology on this campus is unrivaled. In our nationally recognized simulation center, students have the ability to practice their clinical skills on lifelike mannequins that have pulses, take breaths, and will even talk to you. There's even a simulation that depicts a woman in labor, where students can experience all the joys of childhood firsthand, although I somehow find myself wanting to wait and hold out as long as I can on that one. Just last week, following our last practical exam, where we were using the simulators to mimic unresponsive patients, I spoke to one of my classmates who, in the heat of the moment, did not realize that his patient was not an actual human until halfway through taking his vital signs. So needless to say, they're very lifelike. Before I wrap things up, there are a few things I would like to ask of y'all. To the parents, friends, and loved ones that are here today, please have patience with us. Over these next 4 years, we may not have as much free time as we would like, and we may be unusually stressed at some points, especially in the week leading up to one of Dr. Williams' exams. But nonetheless, just know that we could not be where we are today without your love and support along the way. Secondly, to our faculty, please know that although we may not always say it, we are forever grateful for the knowledge that you are bestowing upon us, and we can only hope that one day we have a chance to have such a profound impact on the young minds in medical education as you are having on ours. And lastly, to my fellow students, I'd like to read you a quote by Albert Einstein. He once said, "I have no special talent. I am only passionately curious." When I think about the class of 2017, I'm not quite sure that the first half of this quote applies, but what I will ask of you is to always remain passionately curious in all that you do. I'm excited to see where these next 4 years take us, and I know that with the help of our faculty, mentors, and most importantly, each other, we will emerge with the tools necessary to make a meaningful and lasting difference on the world around us. Thank you very much again for coming. We're all really happy y'all could be with us today and share in this moment. With this, it's my pleasure to now introduce our Dean, Dr. Jerry Yuki.
Terrific job, Hunter, but what could I expect from anyone that was wearing a bow tie except an excellent job? So I am the Dean, Jerry Yuki, and it's my honor to introduce our guest speaker this afternoon. So normally, I would give you the sort of 3-minute, 4-line thumbnail sketch of the speaker, and he or she would come up and talk. But I am humbly privileged to introduce the president of the Josiah Macy Jr. Foundation to be our keynote speaker this afternoon. And he has been such a pioneer and such a leader in medical education and healthcare change that I refuse to do him the disservice of not letting you understand why I hold him in such high esteem. Dr. George E. Tebow graduated summa cum laude from Georgetown University in 1965 and magna cum laude from Harvard Medical School in 1969. He completed his internship and residency in medicine and fellowship in cardiology at the Massachusetts General Hospital. He also trained in cardiology at the National Heart and Lung Institute in Bethesda and at Guy's Hospital in London, and served as chief resident in medicine at Massachusetts General Hospital. For nearly 4 decades at Harvard Medical School, Dr. Tebow played leadership roles in many aspects of undergraduate and graduate medical education. He played a central role in the new pathway curriculum reform and was a leader in the new integrated curriculum reform at Harvard Medical School. He was the founding director of the Academy at Harvard, which was created to recognize outstanding teachers and to promote innovations in medical education. Throughout his career, he has been recognized for his roles in teaching and mentoring medical students, residents, fellows, and junior faculty. In addition to his teaching, his research is focused on the evaluation of practices and outcomes of medical intensive care and variations in the use of cardiac technologies. During that time, Dr. Tebow served as Chief Medical Officer at Brigham and Women's Hospital and as Chief of Medicine at the Harvard-affiliated Brockton West Roxbury VA Hospital. He was Associate Chief of Medicine and Director of the Internal Medical Residency Program at Massachusetts General Hospital. At the Massachusetts General Hospital, he also served as Director of the Medical Intensive Care Unit and the founding Director of the Medical Practice Evaluation Unit. He became the 7th President of the Josiah Macy Jr. Foundation in January 2008. Immediately prior to that, he served as Vice President of Clinical Affairs at Partners Healthcare System in Boston, one of the best-known group practices in the United States, and Director of the Academy at Harvard Medical School. He was the first Daniel D. Fetterman Professor of Medicine and Medical Education at Harvard Medical School and is now the Fetterman Professor Emeritus. Dr. Tebow is Chairman of the Board of the Massachusetts General Hospital Institute of Health Professions, and he serves on the board of the New York Academy of Sciences, the Institute on Medicine as a Profession, and the Lebanese American University. He serves on the President's White House Fellows Commission, and for 12 years he chaired the Special Medical Advisory Group for the Department of Veterans Affairs. He is past president of the Harvard Medical Alumni Association and past chair of Alumni Relations at Harvard. He is a member of the Institute of Medicine of the National Academy of Sciences. Dr. Tebow has been the recipient of numerous awards and honors from Georgetown and Harvard. He has been a visiting scholar both at the Institute of Medicine and Harvard's Kennedy School of Government, and a visiting professor of medicine at numerous medical schools in the United States and abroad. He joins us this afternoon as our guest and keynote speaker for only the second white coat ceremony of the USC School of Medicine, Greenville. This is, however, his third trip to Greenville. He visited us in April for the last gathering of the New Millennium Medical Schools, now known as the Macy Schools, because of Dr. Thibault's interest in supporting and studying their development through sponsorship by the Macy Foundation. Interestingly enough, his first visit to Greenville was when he was born some years ago. And in fact, not only was Dr. Thibault born in Greenville, but he added to the auspiciousness of this occasion by letting me know that 4 days ago he celebrated his 70th birthday. And he and his wife have been researching some of their parents. Dr. Thibault's father actually passed haunts at Clemson and Donaldson when he was here at George's birth. So without further ado, as if he needed any more, it is my true pleasure to welcome Dr. George Thibault as your keynote speaker this afternoon.
Well, thank you, Jerry, for that very, very generous introduction. And as he said, this is a propitious time for me to come back to find my roots here that began 70 years ago, and to find our roots together in this noble profession that this ceremony today symbolizes your entry into. And I'm honored to be here to share this experience with you and to share my thoughts for the moment. Now, Spence already said the tradition of a white coat ceremony to welcome medical students into the profession is new. It was started by the Arnold P. Gold Foundation in 1993 as part of the foundation's mission to keep the care in healthcare. The oath, which is part of the ceremony, represents your public acknowledgement of the responsibilities of the profession and your willingness to assume these obligations, witnessed by faculty, family, and friends. A century ago, Justice Louis Brandeis defined the three essential elements of a learned profession. First, a learned profession has a specialized body of knowledge that it is responsible for mastering, improving, and passing on to its successors. This speaks to our responsibility for competency, scholarship, and teaching. Secondly, a learned profession puts the interests of the public above its own interests. This speaks to our responsibility for altruism. And third, a learned profession is responsible for its own regulation. This speaks to the contract that we have with society that allows us to be self-regulating, but only if we fulfill the first two tenets. Medicine shares these principles with other learned professions, such as education, law, engineering, architecture, and many others. But we believe it has unique responsibilities because of the intimate personal nature of the work we are engaged in, and because of the adverse personal and social consequence if we fail to uphold these principles. As medicine and the society in which it is embedded both become more complex, our opportunities to do good have been greatly enhanced. But at the same time, the threats to our ability to uphold these tenets of our profession have also become greater. I was moved to read the oath that you've written as a class, and I want to use that oath as a takeoff point for the rest of this talk. I'd like to examine the elements of the oath that you have written and comment on each of the 10 as they represent challenges to you in fulfilling your broad responsibility in the profession. And I'm going to emphasize certain words in each of the 10 elements of the oath. We will uphold the vision of our school to transform health for the benefit of the people and communities we serve. This speaks to your commitment to improvement, but transforming is not easy. There are always tremendous forces that are directed at preserving the status quo, and it takes perseverance and dedication to transform. It is not for the faint-hearted. Number 2, we will be active members in our community, striving to understand the needs and address the challenges of our patient population. This speaks to your relationship to the community. It is not always easy to know what benefits the people in the community we serve. It takes patience and listening and humility and a willingness to admit mistakes to do that well. Number 3, we promise to foster an environment of cooperation that encourages the success of each peer and the institution as a whole. This speaks to the importance of collaboration. You are a member of a team of health professionals. You will not be able to achieve your professional goals without the help of those other health professions that you will learn about, from, and with throughout your education and your whole career. Number 4, we gratefully acknowledge the wisdom of our educators, colleagues, and mentors, and seek to learn alongside them. Just as you are taught, you will teach. You have a lifelong obligation to share your knowledge and experiences with others and to nurture and teach the next generation of health professionals. Number 5, we commit to lifelong learning, building upon past knowledge and embracing the innovations of future medicine. You have an obligation to be a learner for the rest of your life, to incorporate new science, new technology, and adapt to societal changes that are going to continue to go on well beyond your formal education and training end. Number 6, we value our patients as unique individuals and respect them as partners in wellness. You will be most effective if you engage and empower your patients as equals in the pursuit of health. Their preferences inform your decisions, and their needs and preferences must inform the design of the education and delivery systems of tomorrow. Number 7, we accept our duty to advocate for each patient and promise to maintain patient dignity, autonomy, and privacy. Part of our professional responsibility is to be effective advocates for our patients, and this advocacy role extends to supporting public policies that are in the best interest of the most needy and the most vulnerable. Number 8, we recognize in medicine the art of healing, understanding that our duty to care extends beyond treating symptoms and requires a compassion for humanity. Medicine is both art and science. It is necessary to be knowledgeable and technically proficient, but that is not sufficient. Your experiences in medicine must expand, not diminish, your humanity. Number 9, we will work to live balanced lives, caring for ourselves so that we can better care for others. Just as our profession must accept the responsibility for self-regulation, each of us individually is responsible for our own self-regulation to achieve balance, perspective, and good health in order to serve others. And finally, number 10, we will foster our enthusiasm and passion and remain forever grateful to those who made this journey possible. Optimism is a key element of personal and professional success. Do not let negativity creep into your approach, even in hard times and in the face of disappointments. You have been blessed with an extraordinary opportunity and given the tools to serve and to serve optimistically. Now, when I went to medical school, as you learned a few years ago, We did not have a formal white coat ceremony. In reflecting on my own experiences, I had something like a white coat ceremony when I was a little boy, and I made house calls with my father, a general practitioner in a small town in rural upstate New York with his office in our home. I was awed by the privilege of being allowed into people's homes and aware of the reverence that the patients and the families had for my father. Though I did not know it at the time, my ideas of professionalism were formed by the example of my father in his relationship with his patients and the community. Much has changed in medicine in the 50 years since he died prematurely of a heart attack. Many of these changes have been for the better. He would be happy that he could do more to help his patients with new drugs and interventions that have reduced mortality in cancer, cardiovascular disease, and infectious diseases, and converted many previously fatal diseases into chronic diseases. But he probably would be bewildered by the organizational complexity, the computers, the business side of medicine that seem contradictory to the personalized caring that he provided. He understood that what people really want and need are compassion, sensitivity, and a healing relationship. Our challenge, your challenge, is to preserve those values in the midst of the complexity of today's healthcare. We need the advances in technology, the new science, the computers, and the multidisciplinary teams. But we must not sacrifice the professional values that were expressed in my father's small-town general practice of 50 years ago, because those values are timeless, and they represent what people really need. It will not be easy to fulfill this oath, but you are not being asked to do it alone. You have your teachers, mentors, and role models as the second entering class in this wonderful new medical school, which is committed to these ideals. You have your classmates and medical colleagues from whom you will learn and by whom you will be inspired. You will have all of your colleagues in the other health professions, nursing, pharmacy, social work, physical therapy, and many more, who will also be your teachers and role models and your companions in this journey. And most importantly, you will have your patients, their families, and the communities you serve. They will be your teachers and guides if you let them and if you take full advantage of it. You are embarking on a wonderful lifelong journey of learning, service, and compassion. Never forget how privileged you are. Never forget the remarkable privilege we have to enter into the most physical and emotional relationships with our patients at their most vulnerable times, when their needs are the greatest. You must fulfill this oath to be worthy. I'm confident that you will. Godspeed.
I'd like to thank Dr. Tebow for such an inspirational address to the class and to the audience. And I'd like to make sure that the students, this class of 2017, don't lose sight of what a tribute it was for someone of the experience and wisdom of Dr. Tebow to use the oath that you personally developed as the backbone for the address that he gave you. Great job. And so with that, I think having had this oath put in perspective for you, I'd ask you to stand and take your oath. To the audience, I'm sure you figured it out by now, but if you've got a program, the oath is in the program, and the students actually, like last year's class, wrote this oath themselves. Matt, you want to lead them? Hunter? Sorry. Terrific. Class, if you'd remain standing. Hunter, hopefully it's the last time I'll call you Matt. We'll see. And now I'd like for Dr. Jim Buggy, our Associate Dean for Student Affairs, to come to the podium to present the class.
Hello, everybody. As you can see, our students are recessing. They'll be lining up outside, getting ready to come forward as their names are called, and the dean will don their white coat. I'm going to ask the audience to refrain from clapping or shouting verbal encouragement during the donning of the coats so that all names of students will be clearly heard. Once all the students have been hooded, they're getting a little, graduating them already. Once they have their white coats donned and they return to their seats, we'll have them all stand, and at that point we'll have applause and as much verbal encouragement as we can muster. I also want to mention that there is this whole ceremony is being videotaped, and it'll be available on YouTube and some other media formats if necessary. And we also have a photographer seated right in the front who will be taking a picture, high quality, professional picture, because I saw the ones from last year and they were great, right as the student has the coat donned. So you don't really need to be taking photos. If you do, please, no flashes. And we're now ready. Abdul Rahman. Morgan Amick. Carly Atwood. Lily Barkin. Inga Brown. DeMarco. Kristin Demosthenes. Rachel Donaldson. Lindsay Eller. Taylor Elser. Megan Epperson. Michelle Faucett. Nathan Gasque. Ryan Gill. Tyler Goff. Mackenzie Harbin. Rachel Heidt. Anthony Horton. Quinn Hunt. Lamar Hunter. Runala Jaglal. Michael James. Reema Kashif. Thomas Kellum. Elizabeth Kopang. Chris Lagnice. Eric Lawson. Tristan Lawson. Carolyn Liddy. Lydia Maleknia. Jordan Melray. Hunter Matthews. Michelle Miller. Lindsey-Thomas Motes. Kim Overton. Payal Patel. Amy Phillips. Anna Quantrill. Heather Rodabaugh. Zach Rogers. Tariq Salim. Victoria Seigler. Laura Simon. Ryan Smith. Garrett Snipes. Carolyn Stoddard. Cameron Sutton. Ben Swartz. Josh Tadlock. Lauren Ashley Tipton. Tamara Vandestar. Casey Wong. Dana Westercam. Ashley Williams-Hernandez. So the names of all the students that we called are listed on the back page of your program. And also, if you've noticed, they all have gold pins on their lapel. Those are the Humanism in Medicine pins that were provided by the Arnold P. Gold Foundation. And at this point, I'm going to ask all of our students in their white coats to please stand, and let's give a resounding round of applause. Thank you. One thing I noted as I was standing here watching is the great care that our dean took as he put the coats to make sure that the lapels were nice and the coats were well positioned. And I want to commit to the family and friends that everybody in the medical school is going to try to take as much care at all times with these exceptional students. I want to turn the podium back over to our dean for closing remarks.
Thanks, Jim. So, as Spence told you, last year was my first white coat ceremony. And I wondered at the end of that if this would become routine. And I don't know, I guess, the answer to that quite yet, since this is my second white coat ceremony. But I'll tell you that I'm just as thrilled by this as I was last year. This is really neat. I'm not going to make a lot of closing remarks except to thank a number of people. First, I'd like to thank all of you who are in attendance today. This white coat ceremony really recognizes and signifies the beginning of a long journey for this class of 2017. And for you to share that with them is quite meaningful. Obviously, once again, I'd like to express my appreciation, thanks to Dr. Tebow for an incredible keynote address that I think not only the students, but even the non-physicians in the room can appreciate the meaningfulness of it. I'd like to thank the faculty, the staff, and my administration for all that they've done, all that they're doing, and all that they know they'll continue to do. And a special thanks to the inaugural class for continuing to pave the way for the class of 2017 and the classes that follow, and providing such musical talent that you see up here this evening or this afternoon. These are 3 of the students from the inaugural class, so thank you to Kaiser and to Magdalene and to Jensen. Great. They've auditioned before at some of the other activities in the school, and me, who really doesn't know how to do anything other than sometimes operate, not so much anymore. I'm astounded at the talents, not just in terms of being students and future physicians, that I've seen so far in the inaugural class and the class of 2016. This is an extraordinary group of young people. And for those of you who don't know, I guess probably, certainly everyone here routinely knows this, but these 54 young men and women that you've seen walk across the stage this evening or this afternoon were actually selected from among 2,298 applications for last year. And so they are an incredible group of young men and women. I have no further announcements, nothing else I wish to say to you except for thanks. I'd like for the audience, if you don't mind, to remain seated until the students in the platform have recessed, and then we'll meet you in the reception area for some food, snacks, drinks, and for an all-around good time. As Maggie says in her last remarks for me to follow, or instructions are, at the reception, student musicians, plays, snacks, cake, beverages, happiness abounds. So there you go.